Perhaps the most effective marketing decision made by tobacco companies lies buried and almost unknown in the industry's history. After a 3-year slide of 10% in tobacco consumption in the United States during the late 1960s, Big Tobacco did something that had the extraordinary effect of ending the decline and boosting consumption while slashing advertising expenditures by a third. What was it? The answer also seems extraordinary. On July 22, 1969, during U.S. congressional hearings, representatives of the major American tobacco companies strongly advocated a proposal to ban all of their own ads from television and radio, even though industry studies showed that broadcast media provided the most effective routes to new sales. As a consequence of that unprecedented move, tobacco advertising has been absent from the airwaves in the United States since 1971. Could it be that the American business interests, sobered by the 1964 Surgeon General's report that detailed the deadly denouement of tobacco use, decided to forgo some of their profits to improve the well-being of fellow citizens? That appears unlikely because representatives of the other major U.S. business affected by the ban, that is, the broadcast industry, filed suit in the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn the law 1 month after it was enacted. Thus, it was only the tobacco industry that supported the restriction on its ads. Could it have been the tobacco company executives, then, who became suddenly concerned with the health of the nation? Hardly. They didn't reduce their concentrated efforts to increase tobacco sales one bit. They merely shifted their routes for marketing their products away from the broadcast media to print ads, sports sponsorships, promotional giveaways, and movie products. For instance, one tobacco company, Brown & Williamson, paid for product placement in 22 films in just a 4-year period. So, by tobacco executives' logic, magazines, newspapers, billboards, and films were fair game. Only the airwaves should be off limits to their marketing efforts. What was so special about the broadcast media? In 1967, the U.S. Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, had ruled about that its fairness doctrine applied to the use of tobacco advertising. The fairness doctrine required that equal advertising time be granted on radio and television, only on radio and television, to all sides of important and controversial topics. If one side purchased broadcast time on these media, the opposing side must be given free time to counter-argue. That decision had an immediate impact on the landscape of broadcast advertising. For the first time, anti-tobacco forces such as the American Cancer Society could afford to air counter-arguments to the tobacco company messages. They did so via counter-ads that disputed the truthfulness of the images displayed in tobacco company commercials. If a tobacco ad featured healthy, attractive, independent characters, the opposing ads would counter-argue that in fact tobacco use led to diseased health, damaged attractiveness, and slavish dependence. During the 3 years that they ran, these anti-tobacco spots slashed tobacco consumption in the United States by nearly 10%. At first, the tobacco companies responded predictably, increasing their advertising budgets to try to meet the challenge. But, by the rules of the fairness doctrine, for each tobacco ad, equal time had to be provided for a counter-ad that would take another bite out of the industry profits. When the logic of the situation hit them, the tobacco companies worked politically to ban their own ads, but solely on the air where the fairness doctrine applied, thereby ensuring that the anti-tobacco forces would no longer get free airtime to make their counter-argument. As a consequence, in the year following the elimination of tobacco commercials on air, the tobacco companies witnessed a significant jump in sales coupled with a significant reduction in advertising expenditures. Tobacco opponents found that they could use counter-arguments to undercut tobacco ad effectiveness. But the tobacco executives learned and profited from a related lesson. One of the best ways to enhance audience acceptance of one's message is to reduce the availability of strong counter-arguments to it, because counter-arguments are typically more powerful than the arguments themselves. This is a story that comes from the book Persuasion by Robert Cialdini, which illustrates the fact that rather than just explaining a concept, you will keep people's attention a lot better if you use a mystery story. This is an example of a mystery story because the tobacco companies made this magical result in their advertising while cutting their advertising, which is totally counterintuitive. So we start with the mystery, we deepen the mystery, and then we get into what the explanation is not, and then finally at the end we get into what the explanation actually is. So if you've noticed online VSLs, video sales letters, they do this a lot. They follow this structure. It's because it's really, really good for keeping people's attention, keeping people really engaged in what it is you have to say. So I hope that's helpful. If you like this channel, subscribe, like the video, all that. I'll see you next time.